Hello and welcome to today's video. The custom that I'm making is going to look a little something like this. It's actually a sticker design that I made for my Etsy shop. So I started off by using acetone to remove the factory paint from the bowl, just so I could have a clean base and get started with sculpting and all that. And this is actually where I learned that the eyes of the G7 LPS are different from the eyes of the G2 LPS and other previous generations. So I've heard that they are coated in resin. I don't know how true that is, but it was a pain in the butt. But by using 100% acetone and scraping, I was able to get it off. For my sculpting, I used Milliput. It's very similar to epoxy sculpt. It's a 2-part clay and it hardens with time. And I found that in the early stages of it, it's kind of mushy and difficult to work with, and then once it hits that 1 hour mark, it gets a little bit, it holds its shape better. Sorry for this being vertical video. I posted it on my Instagram story and totally forgot to get an in-between shot for YouTube. Hopefully you don't mind. I also hope that y'all don't mind kind of lulls in my voiceover. I am not a super high energy person and I don't want to fake it for YouTube. It feels not very genuine? You know what I mean. But the drill that I'm using I actually got for dip nails. I don't know if you've seen the dip powder nails. It's kind of like acrylic, but instead of using monomer with a larger brush, you just put a coat on top of it. But this drill came in super handy when it came to filing all of this down, because my sculpting skills are not incredible, so there were a lot of small imperfections with the sculpt, and this helped just kind of smooth everything out and blend it in with the original vinyl of the LPS. And also just, especially with the body, it helped with shaping, because to get that point, like I mentioned before, the Milliput, it holds its shape better once you're at that hour mark, but I'm not going to waste all my time and wait for it to harden and then have it maybe harden too much. I'm still going to sculpt when it's kind of mushy. Maybe that's just me being impatient. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. But just filing everything down made it, I think, 1,000 times better. I think it just improved it a lot, in my opinion. And I should have filed the hair around the neck down more. I don't know if I got a lot of footage of this later in the video, but I sculpted so much fur around the neck to the point where the head no longer fit on. And it was a whole debacle. I had a little mentee bee over it because I couldn't get the head back on, and I super glued the peg in after whittling it down and making the whole of the neck larger. That didn't work for very long, by the way, so I kind of just balance it on there for photos, but you can kind of see how I'm using it to get finer details with this different tip, because the large flat one, it's good for blending and stuff, but for getting in those little crevices, this teeny tiny one works a lot better, and it kind of just helps define the shape more, especially for the tufts on the legs and the body. It was really hard because I have larger hands, so I have larger fingers, and it's hard to sculpt those teeny tiny details without specific tools for that. So going in and using a reductive process, such as filing it away, rather than an additive process in the sculpting stage, it's just a lot easier for me personally. I found out that I really love a reductive sculpting process, kind of like if you're chiseling away at marble or something. Obviously I'm not chiseling away at marble. I don't have those kind of skills or funds, but it's kind of interesting to reveal the piece slowly by chipping away rather than adding on. I don't know if it's just easier for my brain. It seemed to be. I hope you guys like kind of the more chill, atmospheric video. I like having on videos in the background where people are creating and just kind of yapping. And I think it's more comforting than someone who's just super high energy and look at this, this is changing all the time, different shots. And it can be kind of boring sometimes. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a short attention span like most of us do. But I think the slow content is kind of fun as well, especially for whenever you're just kind of decompressing from your day. So getting into the painting process, I actually, it doesn't look like dry brushing here because I globbed on too much in the beginning, but I used gesso and kind of a dry brushing method to prime the surface. Not only does this kind of just smooth everything out, but it also helps the paint grip. I've kind of had to learn the hard way that acrylic paint doesn't love sticking to vinyl, and it really likes to chip off and flake off even if you add a surface sealant like Testors or Mr. Super Clear is really popular. So the gesso just kind of helps add a little bit more grit for it to stick to. If you haven't used gesso before, it's typically what is put on canvases. A lot of canvases that you buy in store, like at a hobby store or Walmart or something like that, they are already gessoed. Granted, it isn't very high quality gesso, so you might still want to add some on top of that. But whenever you're like stretching your own canvas, you're literally using like a canvas fabric, and then you put the gesso on top so that your paint doesn't just like seep through. So that's why I had this idea, is because it's technically a surface primer, and I didn't want to go buy a surface primer. So yeah. I also kind of like globbed it on in certain areas where my sculpting and sanding fell short. There were a couple just like places where it didn't blend exactly right, and I found it kind of interesting that you could just like glob on some paint or glob on some gesso to just smooth it out a little bit. It just kind of like filled in the cracks. I'm sure there's a better, more like high-tech or professional way of doing that, but I found that this was suitable enough, I guess. I was definitely trying to get it in all of the nooks and crannies, which was kind of difficult because I don't know if you can tell, this paintbrush has seen way better days, but I don't want to mess up my like nicer, smaller paintbrushes with gesso and stabbing it all over there. And I used my cheap Amazon airbrush to do the base coat, and it was kind of difficult to see if the base coat was actually opaque or not because the cow's body is a really light cream. I think the paint color is like antique white or something like that. So to actually be able to tell the difference between antique white and the white gesso was kind of hard, especially because the gesso wasn't opaque or anything. It was over the orange base, so it took a few coats for me to be confident that it was opaque. And there's the other little army. I haven't finished those other customs yet, but hopefully in the future I will get a little bit more motivation for it. I got a little bit burnt out of customs, not gonna lie, and part of that is because of this cow. It kind of made me mad just because there were a lot of ups and downs, but that's kind of any creative process when you think about it. I was really proud of the pink that I was able to mix. It was pretty close to the sticker color in the original artwork that I made, but I really like the desaturatiedness of it. I'm more of a desaturated colors person. I think they're easier on the eyes and, I don't know, less visually stimulating. And I think in a world where we are constantly overstimulated, I get a little bit fatigued over it. I got some of these small detail brushes, I want to say from Walmart, to be honest, and they worked really well. They don't last as long as like a really nice brush, but if you treat them nice and you don't like clean them super aggressively, like swishing them around in your jar all crazy, then they'll last a good while. It kind of looks like I'm doing nothing, but I am adding a slightly lighter shade of pink onto the tops and highlights of the fur, just to kind of give it some dimension. I don't know if you can really tell the difference in the end product, but it made me feel better in the moment, so that's all that really matters. I probably could have went with a more contrasting highlight color, a little bit lighter, but I still think it looks good regardless. And I don't know if there are any mess ups in this clip in particular, but a lot of the time I have pretty shaky hands, so it's hard for me to be super accurate with my color placement, and sometimes it gets on areas that have already been painted with a different color, like on the base of the body. So I had to like go in several times and correct that, and that was one of the things that kind of frustrated me with this. But I think this project in particular taught me a lot of patience, you really do have to take your time if you want something to come out well. And that's kind of something that, oh, sorry, before I go on, I love the little cutie mark that I added on here. Those little strawberries, they're very adorable in my opinion. Shoot, see, I knew that would make me forget what I was talking about. Patience. But see, here I am like correcting the base coat and stuff. A lot of my past art classes and art teachers have mentioned that I have the skill to create something really nice, but I rush through my projects all the time, and that ends up leaving me with something that I am dissatisfied with, and something that is, for a lack of better words, pretty mid. So I definitely need to learn to take my time and use my skills to the best of my ability, and also try and better my skills while I'm at it, because if I only stick with things that I am entirely and completely comfortable with, then I'm not really going to progress. Which, not to say that you have to progress in your art. I think it's a little bit silly, the discussion that people are like, oh, you have to constantly be bettering yourself, you need to do studies all the time, you need to get better at anatomy. I think if you're having fun, you're doing great. That's all that matters, is that you're enjoying what you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, why are you doing it? It doesn't make sense to me. Which I say that now, and then I'll go and do things that I don't enjoy and then get frustrated, and it's a whole hullabaloo. But just sitting down and taking the time to enjoy the process and sit with it and correct mistakes and not rush through things and not just get it done so that I can see my finished product, it makes me more proud of my work in the end, and it makes me more proud of myself in the end, because I can say, hey, I did that, not, hey, there's that thing I want to fix, that thing I didn't do right, that thing from the beginning could have been done better, yada 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 kind of thing. So take the time to correct your mistakes, and take the time to try to avoid mistakes as you're going. And that's kind of just advice for myself. You can take it or leave it. I don't know if it will apply to your artistic journey, but I think it definitely applies to mine. And it'll probably be a theme that you'll see in many more videos to come. See, here I am doing almost exactly what I was doing earlier, but again, because I knew that it needed to be lighter, and I might as well fix it now than once I seal it up and then regret it later and then don't have the time or the energy to go back and adjust a project. I feel like I'm one of those people that, like, once I set something down, I'm done with it. So if the project is half finished, then it's just gonna remain half finished. So definitely pushing through this was pretty big for me, just because I was frustrated at so many different points and wanted to just abandon it as a whole at so many points. But I knew that this was a design that I really liked. It was one of my first customs with sculpting. Honestly, one of my beginner customs in general. I've done my Rosie custom, and I've done an anteater, and a really crappy, I think it was like G3, those LPS that everybody hates. I did one on there, and that one sucked. And the anteater was also a little bit rushed, so it wasn't great. But the Rosie one I took my time with, and I really, really like her. I don't know if you've seen that video yet, but it is on my channel if you want to go check it out. It's Rosie from Animal Crossing. She was my first ever villager, and I really like her. And also just really like that custom in general. So if you want to check that out, feel free to, but the algorithm might prefer it if you finish this video first. It's not me telling you what to do, just, maybe consider it. Oh, there's an ant on my desk. There's constantly little sugar ants on my desk, and I don't know if that's just a southern humid place thing or what. I used to get them on my desk all the time, and my cat Henry would just sit there and lick up the little trail. He's a really weird cat, but I say that most people's cats are weird. Pretty much anybody who has one will be like, yeah, my cat is so not normal and odd. I think that's just most cats in general. I think that's what makes them so endearing. I'm not really a huge dog person, but I do still like dogs a lot. They're just, again, I'm not super high energy, and a lot of dogs are, so it's just a difference in personality for the most part. You can kind of see I'm just highlighting the tips of the little tufts of hair. I think that helped kind of separate it. I like the hair sculpt, but I also think that I can improve a lot. I've seen a lot of other people in the custom community that do just incredible hair, and I don't know how, because it's you have to have such a specific tapered shape and to layer it properly and to have it go in the right direction. There were so many times where I had sculpted a hair tuft only to put it on the LPS and realize that I hated how it looked on there. And then I just had to like peel it off and get frustrated and do it again. I feel like a lot of my art is not consumed by frustration. That's probably not the best word to use, but frustration is definitely a part of my artistic process. But I think that it's a sign of me wanting to do something better or differently, and hopefully I can take that in a better direction. Painting the hooves, I kind of thought that putting this darker color in the center would be like you would be able to see it really easily and tell that there was color definition, but again, I don't think I had enough contrast with a lot of colors in this LPS's design, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I like desaturated things. I also like things without a whole lot of contrast, but probably could have pushed the values a little bit more. Maybe that's just those past art teachers talking. I was always very scared of shading, like aggressively or abruptly. Like I always felt the need to overblend and almost just make everything into a gradient, which I think part of that is just me not completely understanding shading, and it's probably just one of those things that I do need to study. And I do enjoy shading. I shade most of my things, and I think whenever I do something with flat color, I'm a little bit bored by it. There's a lot of other artists I know that can do things that are so incredible and very cute in flat color and pull it off really well, but I feel like a lot of times, I don't know if it's my line art that lacks definition, but a lot of times whenever I do a piece in flat color, it just doesn't really come out the best. With the nose of this LPS, I don't think I show it later, so I'm going to tell you about it now. I don't know if you've seen a cow's nose up close. Maybe that's just like a rural thing, but cow noses are kind of wet, kind of like a dog nose, if you think about just a really big dog nose. So I ended up putting like a gloss Mod Podge and a little bit of resin on the nose to make it look wet, and it's a really cute detail that you might only notice in person. And I originally sealed this LPS with matte Mod Podge and my airbrush, which for $30, I love this thing so much. Like, it gives me trouble, but I can't argue with $30. I did eventually go in and seal this with Tester's Dull Coat, just because it's a little bit more sturdy, and Mod Podge is water soluble, so I didn't want it to get wet and then it mess up the sealant. And then what I'm putting on the eyes right now is UV resin. I really want to get into resin eyes, like the ones that people, they like cut out the eye shape and then they'll put the resin eyeball in the back. I think they're really, really cute and well done. But for now, I'm just sealing them with resin. And this is primarily because whenever I try to use like a gloss varnish that a lot of other customizers use, it just doesn't look very smooth to me. And that's partly just because the way I paint eyes, I glob on a lot of paint, and I mess up a lot with the eyes because they're so detailed. And I'll go back in and they're very textured by the time that I'm done. So having something really thick like resin is able to seal them and smooth them a little bit better for me personally. And if I only did gloss varnish, I would probably be doing like 10 coats of it to get it even remotely smooth. But there are some drawbacks to using resin. Sometimes it floods outside of the eye, and I don't know if it's just this brand of resin in particular, but it stays kind of sticky afterwards. And you can get that stickiness off with like isopropyl alcohol. But what I also learned is that isopropyl alcohol will dissolve your Tester's Dull Coat and dissolve your acrylic paint if you scrub hard enough. But the alcohol kind of dulls the shine of the eyes a little bit, and that's what I find so great about using resin is the shine. So it's just, I don't know, there's pros and cons to the process. And if you're wondering how I sealed it again after the fact and didn't disturb the resin eyes, I used liquid latex to cover the resin. And then once that dried down, I was able to spray over the sealant and then peel off the liquid latex to protect it, I guess. But after I cured it for a good long while, it was pretty much ready to show off. So took the little strawberry cow outside and got some pretty cute shots. People on TikTok and Instagram have been recommending some really cute names like Mooberry and Milkshake, and I don't know, I love them all, so it's really hard to decide what suits him the best. But I hope you like this little cow as much as I do. And I also have stickers of the design in my Etsy shop if you're interested. I don't think I'll be selling him just because I'm too proud, but thank you so much for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me and supporting me, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.